Hey guys, it's Mike. Welcome back to the channel. I have something special for you today. I spent the last 2.5 years rebuilding this skid steer, about 600 hours worth, and I threw it all together in a condensed version. So let's get to it and enjoy. Well, here it is. Took the seat and the battery cover off. I regret not getting a great before operational video of this machine. To be honest, I wasn't taking YouTube that seriously when I started this, so this was the best that I got at the time. I don't think that quick attach was this style on this early of a machine. Tires aren't the best, but I bought this machine down in southern Missouri near the Ozarks. It ran, started, drove, but it definitely had its issues. It had some leaks and it just felt kind of loose overall. Appear to be greased. If I had to do it over again, I would have picked a machine in better condition. I also likely paid too much for this, as prices for used construction equipment were still inflated in 2023. I looked back and I only had this machine for 1 month before I started tearing into it. I decided that I would start with the boom because there's a lot of fine details on it and the complexity of it. And I figured starting with the hardest part first would help me have a better chance of actually completing this project. The boom had a lot of wore out pins and it was a lot worse shape than I initially thought. I made a homemade or do-it-yourself line boring setup and brought these from 1 inch is what the standard is to 1 inch 300 thousandths, so 300 over. All the worn out pins and bushings really put me in a tough spot. I couldn't justify bringing in a professional, so I started thinking of ways to do it myself. In the end, I came up with 2 pillow block bearings, a solid bar of 1144 cold rolled steel, a custom ground high-speed steel insert bit, and then I fed the whole mechanism forward and backwards with a piece of all thread. It turned out pretty well. There was a lot of trial and error, welding the pieces on, aligning them, taking them off, taking measurements, taking more cuts, a lot of back and forth. It was very time consuming. I spent over 6 months on this part of the project alone. With all the bushings bored out oversized, I had to turn new pins on the lathe out of 4140. The bushings I turned from 52-100 stock. It's the same material that they make ball bearings out of. I then researched how to properly heat treat it and used my propane forge to do all the heat treating. After many early mornings before work and 6 months of time, I was finally ready to paint. I went with Case brand original power tan for the top coat and a Sherwin-Williams primer. All the time and energy that I put into the boom was well worth it. The paint job really looked amazing. Now it's time to see if the quick attach plate will line up and pin to the boom. Who am I kidding? I tested this before painting. With the boom done, all the hydraulic cylinders, I didn't want to take any chances on them. It looked as if they had recently, within the last couple years, have probably been resealed or rebuilt. But like I said, no shortcuts on this machine, so I went ahead, bought rebuild kits, and I repacked all of the cylinders. There we go. It was finally time to pull the engine. I don't know why I did it the way I did it. I was trying to shortcut it by not disconnecting the hydraulic lines for the twin pump, and this really just caused me a lot of issues, mainly with clearance. Ended up wasting a bunch of time and having to pull the big aluminum bell housing off the engine just to get it out of the machine. The twin pump had to come out anyway, so I have no idea why I did it the way I did it. I'm going to go ahead and lift it up out of there now. With all the main powertrain components out of the way, the hydraulic hoses, hard lines, and valves all needed to be removed. The bottom of this machine was nasty. It had several inches of mud, debris from who knows how long. It needed a serious power washing. With all the crud out of the way, I could finally get down deeper into this machine. I had to remove the hydraulic motors, the axles with sprockets and chains, and check the wheel bearings. I ended up deciding to replace all the wheel bearings with new Case OEM parts.
There we go. That one seems to be in better condition than the other side.
Not so hot in there. Definitely not packed with grease like it's supposed to be. And then I took an old bearing race that I took out of this. I ground the sides down so that way it slips in the housing. And I'm going to use that as my driver to drive the seal in. This piece of brass is going to come in handy. You can use a piece of lead or any soft metal. Your separator plate, sprocket. This one has the normal damage from the parking pins. Your washer, a nut. And now with an 1.5-inch socket, torque to 240 to 300 inch-pounds. You want to know how? On these Case machines, when they're used hard and abused, the frame cracks where the axles mount, typically around the studs. I weld up all the cracks and made reinforcement plates that mount on the inside of the chain case to really stiffen things up. The rear cross member of this machine is bent upward. This is also the rear engine mount. I think this happens because the machine goes up on 2 wheels and that hitch plate digs into the ground, or when going over ledges, it bends this section up. So I'm beating it back in place so then I can reinforce and weld the cracks. I haven't shown it here, but the right rear section of this frame is the hydraulic tank. At some point in the past, someone backed into something pretty hard and put some big dents in the frame of this machine that I just couldn't live with. So I had to use a rosebud, heat the tank material up, and use some pullers welded on with studs to pull the dents out. Unfortunately, I didn't realize with the oil film on the inside of the tank caused a lot of ash to settle into the tank. I was afraid of the ash causing serious hydraulic component damage, so I'm flushing the tank with a mixture of acid and water.
But I got the primer coat, the first final coat on here, and part of the second top coat.
Just like the boom, the frame turned out really nice. Now we have a good foundation to work off of.
All the exterior towers and the inside of the towers all need painted still. I do have the underside. I got 2 coats on it, but not inside this kind of hitch channel area. What I need to do yet is get like I said, the rest of this painted.
The hydraulic valves and distribution manifold were rebuilt with new O-rings and seals.
Also been gone through and cleaned and all new O-rings put on it. So really all I've done in the past couple months is just go through these, and I've not had a ton of time to work on this machine. Like I said, dude, that's the first.
I really don't enjoy traditional puzzles, but this is definitely a hydraulic line puzzle. Thankfully, everything was marked with color-coded zip ties.
Okay, last hard line for the tilt is cleaned up, ready to go on.
The story goes that a lot was done on the powertrain of this machine, and it wasn't the prior owner, but who he bought it from. I found the name of this dealer written in black magic marker on some of the components of this machine. Looks like they were either sourced used or had been welded on. I called this dealer, who admitted that this was their COVID project, but wouldn't give me any details. It doesn't appear that they were really inside the engine, but I could definitely see that someone had been working on this.
Four. Let's see if it'll pop loose here. Scared. On the bench. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Not too bad. Okay guys, you're seeing it as I am. You'll pump off. I think we're ready to flip this guy over. Sweet.
The crank and bearings in this engine were actually in pretty good shape. I measured the crank and it was in spec, so I could reuse it. The bearings had some wear marks to them, but nothing that would have been really an issue long term. The issue that I did find was that the camshaft had one lobe that was worn and a lifter that was damaged. So you can see here that the lifter had some weird wear to it. I sent the lifter and cam off to Delta Camshaft in Seattle, Washington, and they did a great job on it. Okay, I got the engine turned back around and I'm taking a look to see how much ridge there is and the carbon I need to remove to get the pistons out. Fortunately, there's really not any kind of ridge, but there is quite a bit of carbon. Like you heard there, the pistons and cylinders ended up being in good shape. I reused the pistons, I did put new rings on them, and I prepped the bores with a hone. I did use precision measuring equipment dial bore gauge and micrometer to verify my piston to bore clearance was still in spec. My cylinder taper and out around was also in spec, so there was no reason to bore this block.
Okay, a few days ago I ultrasonic cleaned all the main caps and they should be ready to go. I did mark them all before I took them out, but I found out they're factory marked. All right, awesome.
With the new main bearings installed, the crankshaft end play was in spec. Now this engine can go back together. Okay, front, let's get the rings. 120 off like I did the other one. Right. Right here. It's going a little bit easier this go around. I just got the top one left to get down in, work it around. It's okay, bud. There we go. Okay. And now we just push it down in. There it goes. Get the adjusters around top of the post rods. There we go. Grab the second one here. Oh, the injector pump. There's a story behind this. I contacted Area Diesel Service in Carlinville, Illinois, and they invited me to their shop, and I was able to help them or be in the same room as them while they rebuilt my injector pump. Everything went smooth, got it back the same day. A week later, I installed it on the machine. I was having smoking issues that I thought was related to the fueling. Turned out my rings just were not seated yet, and I ended up damaging the new injector pump. So I sent it back, they fixed it again for free, and then assisted me with proper installation, and all was well. But thankfully, I didn't have to pay for the second rebuild. They really helped me out. I'm just going to run them up with this and then I'll torque them down. Everything's about back on this engine except for the front hydraulic pump, which drives the loader hydraulics. And then we got to get the rear bell housing back on. I'm replacing it with a new one because the one that came with the machine had been previously welded on. There's a rubber seal around this rear main seal plate that's got to go on. I have it on and some Vaseline on it so it should slide on easily. With most of the parts back on the engine, it was time to lift it back into the frame. Putting it in went really smooth compared to taking it out. Get so far. I might be able to push it up enough. Yeah. I cannot believe it was that easy. Like a glove. Alright, that's pretty cool. Now for the alternator, tensioner, belt, and fan. Pop the radiator in and should be really close to firing this thing off. Backwards. And then bolts are cleaned up, I got Loctite on them. Throw a couple bolts down in the bottom so it doesn't vibrate and fall out of here. I think it might go. Oh yeah. So you remember that smoking issue I was telling you about? Well, this is what it was doing. In the end, I think I jumped to conclusions and really it just needed to be loaded. the rings broken in, and just ran. After some run time, this all cleared up, so I was just paranoid. With the frame and engine done, now I could dive into the twin pump. And they call it a twin pump for a reason. There's actually two single pumps joined together with a dry shaft. Here I'm separating the pump because I need to change an O-ring between the two that's been leaking. This pump had evidence that it had been apart before and completely rebuilt. I had a box full of parts from the prior owner that was given to him from the shop that I mentioned earlier, and all of the internal components looked to have been replaced. This machine had no drivability issues prior to, so I didn't go any further other than resealing the pumps, and I replaced the dry shaft, which is common for the splines to strip on the front.
Let's see how much wear is on the top of that guy now.
This is one of the drive control spools. These are really common to leak on this model.
Okay, everything looks clean.
Remember earlier when I said the dry shaft pump splines was a common problem to strip? Well, that's because the two front mounting bolts that hold the pump to this plate become loose and eventually fall out. Then the pump shakes and vibrates around against this plate and causes a weird wear pattern. I'm afraid if I don't straighten and flatten this surface, it's going to do it again. This is the coupler that splines with the main pump dry shaft splines. It almost always needs replaced. You have to put new bushings in it, which is what I'm doing here on the press.
Ram. I've been doing it hard the whole time.
With new O-rings and seals on the pump, I put a coat of paint on it, mounted the plate that we machined flat, and now the twin pump can get mounted back in the machine.
There it is. Alright, so these bolts also calls for Type 271, and it's I think 90 foot-pounds of torque. Be a little bit more cautious. Not cautious, but particular. I put the Loctite on.
Now for all new hydraulic hoses. Unfortunately, these hoses had been replaced probably within the last few years, but the prior owner or installer never put any hose protection on anything. He also didn't pay much attention to what they were rubbing against, so many of them had really bad rub marks all the way down to the steel braiding and had to be replaced. I thought I was going to luck out when I bought this machine, seeing all of the new hydraulic lines, but in the end, I spent over $1,000 on new hydraulic lines.
Alright, so it goes to this fitting right here. This is the inlet to the pump, the main supply.
This is the second hydraulic pump on the machine. It mounts to the front of the engine. It's a gear pump, and its job is to run the loader hydraulics, so the tilt and the boom up and down. This pump was leaking, so it needed a new seal and O-rings. Everything else inside the pump was fine.
I have a new -041 size O-ring. Work your seal in circles so it doesn't rip.
At this point into the project, I really needed to test the hydraulic powertrain of this machine. I needed to get the wheels and tires on it. So out came the sandblaster to blast all the wheels. Installing these 10-ply skid steer tires onto the rims was really a bear. I wanted something different as far as the tread goes, so I went with a SKS 753 from Camzo. It's a lot different than your typical bar tread, and they're supposed to be really good in snow. Unfortunately, they're about double the price, but I think it was worth it.
I think it looks really sweet.
Oh, the rear door. What you're not seeing here is that this is the second door. I bought this from a used machine. The original door was really twisted, and I tried to weld it to my welding table and put a long lever on it to bend it back. Unfortunately, about knocked all my teeth out. So I gave up on that one and started on this door. I spent $400 on this used door, but it was in a lot better shape. In the end, I did win and got it to about 90%. Got it sandblasted and painted, and then started mounting it to the machine.
Finished this door project up. I got the hardware over here. Also painted it yesterday. So let's finish this up and get this installed. And
With the rear door on, it was test drive time. I got it started, and for the first time, it's moving under its own power in a long time.
right, maybe this is not the
I
smart.
should have been a little more careful when I came to driving it this way, but I was so excited, I really didn't care at the time.
Wire.
But thinking back on it, it really wasn't all that smart.
Stick it in there.
With the joyride out of the way, it was time to get serious to finish this project. I had to get the cab done. There was still a lot of work to do.
I'm off. I'm just going to leave that on actually. And this is a horn button, I believe. So we're just going to set that aside for now. Now we'll come out of there. There we go. I don't think that's this controls the parking brake. This guy's surprisingly. That one's kind of froze as well. Probably still okay though. I actually think I did something.
With the bottom of the cab / fender assembly straightened up, cleaned, and sandblasted, I could finally start going back together.
Much better. I'm actually going to change these around. The manual shows them going from the other direction. Is it the creep? This is wrong, and there's definitely some adjustments that's going to have to be made after the fact. To get all my clearances right on the spacing of these pine joints to this bracket, I need to get this stuck down to see where I'm at.
The day finally came when it was time to get the lower cab back on the machine. With the lower cab installed, I jumped right into the electrical. Not having the roll cage on allowed me to have a lot more room. The machine needed a completely new wire harness. Unfortunately, through Case, the wire harness was just way too expensive. I opted to build my own. Building the wire harness was very tedious and boring, so I really didn't show any of it here. We're going to jump right into restoring the rollover cage.
Two bent end ones on this side, and this one was completely missing, so I made a new one, welded it in, and just a tad bit, this corner here was bent in. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. Most of this primed pretty decent. The only thing I didn't get was the underside, so I got her lifted in the air, and I'll do that, and then it needs to sit overnight before I can put the first coat of brown on.
Getting the roll cage painted brown, which is the original color for this vintage of Case 1840, and getting it onto the machine is really starting to make this restoration take shape.
really close here. I think I got enough clearance to get it done, but close.
With the roll cage on, it was time to get the boom on. This boom had been sitting in the back of the shop for more than a year and a half.
Up and over. Get in the slot. About enough clearance. Second. Trying to push it up and over. Maybe. Oh yeah. Yeah. Alright. That'll work. Check this other side. One thing I forgot. The washers. I need to go in here. At least I think I need to go in.
With the main part of the machine all back together, it's time to put the finishing touches on it. This is the instrument panel. It holds the gauge cluster. Here you can see part of the custom wire harness I built. There's two sides to the harness, a cab side and a frame side. This is the cab side that connects to the instrument cluster. Here it's shown without the final touches, the outer sheathing that protects the wires. Now on to the lap bars. These disengage the parking pins and fold down from each side of the cab. When I took the cushions off, I was surprised to see how much rust was underneath. I ended up cutting the whole rusted area off and making a new piece to weld back on.
Wow. Just pulled them out with the sandblaster. They look really, really good. Can't even hardly see where I welded them on. And the geometry looks exactly the same as what I had. 1/2-inch machine bushing. And now our 1/2-inch E-ring clip. And I'm not gonna go real tight on those. I want to be able to. I also want to show you how much play are in the levers. Not much. Those new pins.
You know you're getting really close when the decals go on. This was really tedious, but they turned out so nice. Then on to the seat pan and a bunch of miscellaneous body panels that go inside the cab.
The back should be in front. There we go. There we go, right there. Okay, this rear plate should be pretty easy to install. I bought this second hand. This machine didn't have one. It's a 3/8 bolts. So, don't want to rub the throttle cable.
Since this restoration took the course of over 2 years, I had plenty of time to search Marketplace for accessories. Case offered a weight kit for the rear, and I found one on Marketplace. It brings the factory lifting capacity from 1,400 pounds to 1,750. Yes, I did. I recovered the seat in a hotel. I was extremely careful to take all precautions and not to damage anything in the hotel. Wasn't the smartest thing to do. I used contact cement and found out partway through that the windows were locked shut. I had no way to ventilate the room. Turned the bathroom fan on and hoped no one else could smell it.
Oh, super happy. Really, really glad I spent the money on it. It hurt while I was doing it, but.
The last thing to conquer was the bucket. To be honest, I was losing a lot of motivation at this point. This bucket did not come with the machine. I purchased it separately. It's a 60-inch smooth bucket, whereas the one that came with the machine was a 72-inch tooth bucket. The 72-inch bucket likely came off an 1845C, which was the next size larger machine. This bucket, although solid and fairly rust-free, was pretty beat up along the top edge and on the sides and the bottom. It didn't look bad at the time, but when you start comparing it to the quality restoration, it needed a lot of work.
Probably really hard to see on camera, but got this plane pretty straight. I'm never going to get all the small little. We'll try it. I don't think I can bend it cold.
The cutting edge on this bucket was completely wore out. The bolts holding it on were all frozen and rusted solid, so it was easier just to use the torch to cut them off.
The rest of them I got off by unscrewing.
not much left of it, and it's razor thin on this side. With the bucket all straightened out and the cutting edge removed, I brought it outside for sandblasting. I priced a new cutting edge for my machine and it was $350. I thought that price was crazy. So I went on Marketplace and bought one for $100. That was long enough and needed cut down, but didn't fit my machine. That was a huge mistake. This material is extremely hard to cut. The only thing that I could get through it with was my oxyacetylene torch. I then had to cut new holes in it to fit the plow bolts. I spent so much time on this part of the restoration that I would have been money ahead just spending the $350 on the one that fit. The last piece of the puzzle is the headliner. I thought the original one was going to be able to be reused, but when I tried to clean it, it just fell apart. So I bought some Luan 1/8 inch thick backer board to use as the backing, bought some foam type material for the cushioning, and then ordered some brown material that was close to what it had on it originally. I spent some time figuring out how I was going to do this and figured out that I could clamp everything down and stretch it and pull it tight to get all the wrinkles out. In the end, it turned out really, really well. After 2 years and 3 months, the Case 1840 project was finally complete. It's about as close to new as you could possibly make a 35-year-old machine. It runs, operates, lifts, and works flawlessly. I put it right to work around the house, bringing in the next project. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.